than any other utility across the nation. So we're going to hear these kind of themes over and over again. So you saw this slide already. We focus on the 4 things. So I'm going to start off with this workforce planning and metrics and talk about demand. Because it all starts with, what are the jobs that are available? Why are we here? We're here because we have a need. So I'm going to give you some highlights from our survey that we did in last year, in 2015. So the data was collected. It represents 3/4 of the U.S. electric and gas companies. So it's about 75%, so it's a good number. And it was collected through, in April through July for year-end 2014. So we asked our energy companies to give us data. We also looked at the Department of Labor and Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS data, census data. All that was kind of crunched together to figure out what the demand is. What we found is the workforce is getting younger, and in these particular areas, line workers, engineers, and nuclear operations, because that's where the emphasis has been on hiring over the past several years. Line workers, as they got older, more difficult to climb, more difficult to be in the job, and so the retirements did happen. Engineers, we're starting to see more engineers go. But it does show that we're starting to see the impact of our initiatives. So let me give you some to show what we have. Right now, 51% of the workforce is ready to retire, or can retire over the next 10 years. 51%. That's half the workforce in the utility industry. All right? So if we look at how many are ready now, it's about 9%. In 1 to 5 years, 14%. So in the next 5 years, we're looking at 23% of the workforce. And then 12%, 6 to 10 years. But then we also have this non-retirement attrition. And if you ask utilities, what was your attrition? How many people left the company several years, about 10 years ago? Hardly anybody left. And we're starting to see that non-retirement attrition is higher. So we're looking at the next 5 years, another 16% are going to be gone. And now these are all jobs. I said, yes?
Why was that, the 16%?
That's non-retirement attrition.
Right, but why?
Why? You got the millennials, you got people coming in, and now people are starting to move and go into different jobs. I think the other thing we're seeing is people that are experienced workers don't retire. They might go work for somebody else at a higher pay, or, so some of that happening. But, we're starting to see, it's still, if you look at the numbers, it's still pretty low on a year-per-year basis compared to other companies. But utilities tend to retain people a lot better, but it's happening. So let's look at this. When we looked at the age distribution for companies, in 2006, this was the younger population. You'll see that we have a lot more now, and we're starting to see this curve shift, but it's dropped. So people have retired. But if you look at how many employees we still have, ages 53 to 67, still a large population. What we want to see is a kind of a bell curve, obviously, where it kind of spread out. Hiring has increased. 5 years ago, because of the recession, companies were not replacing one for one. Somebody would leave, and they would say, oh, we're not going to fill that position. We're going to keep it. So now we're starting to see that hiring exceeds retirements. And over 20% of them were line workers. And why? It takes 5 years, 6 years to train a line worker. And, they need to leave. They can't stay because they can't climb as they get older. So this is how it kind of works out, and this is across the U.S. So 34% of the key jobs in the next, by 2019, and then another 11% by 2024. And you'll see that the biggest is in technicians, plant operators, and engineers. And then we start, you know, these are about 11 to 12%, but they're large numbers. All right, so what Florida's trying to do, every single other state is trying to do the same thing because they've got the same problem, same issues. So let's talk about Florida. We've used census data, we've used economic, regional economic information system, and then Agency for Workforce Innovation. We've also used, I think Florida, also the Department of Labor in Florida had some statistics that we put in here. But we worked with EMSI who pulled the data together and came up with the demand. So we're looking at about 4,000 jobs by 2024. And again, these are just these job classifications. And we focus on these in our survey because these are the ones that across the US have the highest demand. And they tend to be the traditional. So, but we see an increase in the number of jobs. So we see that line workers, there's gonna be an increase in the total number of line workers in Florida. There's gonna be an increase in the total number of technicians and engineers. So not only are there retirements, but then there's also additional new jobs that are being created as well. So kind of just give you an idea. And again, these do not include any supervisory jobs. These are just.
Why is the decline in the plant field operators?
Because of the shift, I think, plant closing, some coal plants that might be closing, and the more efficient ones use less operators.
Technology.
And technology is making it much more efficient. Yep. So, however, it's not just about the job, the numbers, right? It's not about the aging workforce. There's a lot of other things happening. So if you take a look at some of these game changers, we have infrastructure modernization. Whether it's up north, there's so much gas infrastructure, they're upgrading the whole system. And there are so many jobs that they need. But it's these infrastructures, so you have a lot of changes in the infrastructure that are creating new jobs, different skill sets, different requirements. Cleaner energy mix, so solar, wind, you're starting to see more of that come into play. And then cybersecurity and physical security of the plants. Those we're starting to see more of. So we're starting to see these changes that impact not just the numbers, but impact also the way work is done and the skill sets that are required. A lot of companies are looking, do I outsource? Do I do the job myself? So if you look at the distribution system, over 60 plus million smart meters have been installed as of 2015. So we're getting more technology savvy. Utilities are investing more than $20 billion in the distribution grid for maintaining, improving the grid. And we're seeing more two-way communication with the smart grid. So quickly on the grid modernization, the south and southeast, number of meters installed. And if you look at the numbers here, we're the second. West is the largest. We're second in the nation with smart meters installed. If you look at transmission lines and the growth of transmission, you'll see that we're close to, Midwest has the highest, okay? And then we're next. So again, the south and southeast is growing. And this is impacting. And I don't have numbers for Florida, but this was the south and southeast we thought, just give you an idea of what we're seeing. Secondly, Mother Nature is still winning, but because people are still retiring, are gonna be retiring. However, your workforce initiatives are paying off. We're starting to see those numbers change. We're starting to see people get hired, and your workforce initiatives that you have in place starting to yield. So your programs that you have and your students are getting these jobs. And again, this is a tough chart to see, but you're starting to see here where the engineer and the line worker up here, they're younger, and then you're starting to see here it's the tech, but they're lower here, so the charts, we're starting to see the curves change, which is what we want. And this is for nuclear. Nuclear, we're starting to see some of the same things with the plant operator. Secondly, the numbers that are leaving, it's not just about the numbers, it's also about when they're leaving, and are they gonna be replaced? And are they gonna be replaced with the same skill sets? So I showed this chart before real quickly, but again, this is where industry needs to look and say, where do I need these folks? When do I need them? How many do I need? And what are the skill sets that I need? Because if you're all working hard getting these kids trained in the high schools and in your programs, you want to make sure that there are jobs for them on the outset when they get out. And we heard this earlier before. It's more about than the technical skills. The soft skills are big gaps as well. And we're not the only ones experiencing that. Every single industry is saying the same thing. It's not them just coming to us, right? Every single industry is saying the same thing. Why do I have to train them in the soft skills, right? So, and it's true. I mean, talk about FIRST Robotics. We just got involved CEWD at the national level for 2 years on FIRST Robotics. These kids have the soft skills. To me, they're amazing. The fact that, you know, they had the communication skills. They are required to learn that. And we started to look at that and say, these are the kids we want with these skill sets. But everybody else wants them. Everybody else wants them. So how do we get them to know that the energy industry is a potential career pathway? Because they don't think about it. Energy doesn't even come into mind. So the other pieces that I I think is real important here is interest to acceptance into the program. How do we create the interest and the career awareness that these jobs are great jobs? And how do we make sure we get the right kids in the program? Because we don't want to set up kids for failure. So if the kids are not going to be successful, they're not going to like the work, they're not going to like the jobs, we don't want them in the program. So getting them to really understand, and we heard this a couple of times, the reality of the work, and so that they know what they're getting themselves into is important. So that's an important piece. So it's not just training them, it's this piece here. And then the next piece is at the end. We're finding kids don't know how to apply for jobs. They don't interview well because of their communication skills. They don't know competency-based interview or behavior-based interviewing. They don't know how to do that. They don't know how to fill out a nice resume. There's typos. We have a registration site where kids put in their resumes and companies can look at the resumes. You should see how many typos are on there. That's a reflection on the student, you know? So these different pieces are also, we think, very critical and important for success. So I'm gonna now kind of talk a little bit about what we have at CEWD that might be helpful to you as teachers and some of the things, resources that we might have. So most of you teach the Energy Industry Fundamentals program. We have a new assessment. The assessment's the same, it's just a new vendor that has made it much easier. I'm gonna talk a little bit about employability skills because we've been working on a nationwide, at a national level, on employability skills and talk a little bit about the resources that might be available to you as teachers and how you can easily incorporate some of those into your class because we don't want you to create more work, but can you somehow embed employability skills in what you currently do? And then middle school fundamentals of energy, we created curriculum for middle school, and we have that available on our site. And we have a high school career academy that has curriculum and hands-on activities, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, that you can all use, all available. So, energy industry fundamentals that you teach. We have 37 active approved providers, 13 high schools, 21 community colleges, and 3 continuing education providers. We now have another 8 high schools that are waiting to get approved, that are in the process. So at the end of the next month or so, we're gonna have another 21 high schools. And that is, many of the states are starting to get energy industry clusters. We're starting to see that expand. And those states are now engaging the high schools. So we're gonna see a lot more. Virginia is really working hard at that energy career cluster, and they're starting to embed these in the high school as well. We've done over 2,000 students have taken the assessment, and 1,585 have certificates, EIF certificates. That's 72% have received certificates. So they have a credential that's recognized by the industry. This year, we've had over 400 students take the assessment, and we've got 290 students, a slightly lower rate, 69%. And then the pass rates tend to be lower at high schools than they are at college. And we think it's because EIF is done at a high school over a whole year. So you're taking very complex technical material and kind of spreading it out over a whole year. And it's harder for the student to remember, what did I learn in September and October again? And going back. So with the semesters in college, it's a semester, shorter period of time, maybe easier to grasp. So that's what we're thinking. We're trying to learn from teachers that have a very high pass rate to figure out what is it that and we've been asking, what is it that you're doing in the classroom that's different? And we'll share that with you, what some of our best practices are. So let me just kind of step back on the assessment. Assessment, it's a new vendor, flexibility, much easier to use. They only charge for students that actually take the test. Before, a teacher would order the test, and if you ordered 20, you paid for 20. But if only 15 kids took the test, you already paid for the 20. Now you're only paying for what you use. And the teachers are able to run a report to see where the kids didn't do well. So you can go back then and say, well, this is the module where they struggled with, and so this is the one we need to go back and refresh and possibly have them retake it. So a lot easier, I think, and a lot better feedback for the teachers to be able to work with the students. So, how come these are empty? Ooh. Okay, they're on my slides. Let me just tell you what the best practice is.
I don't know where they went.
Okay, keep students engaged, all right, with activities. We've got a lot of activities built into EIF. How many of you use EIF? And how many use the activities? All right. Use the activities if you can, the hands-on. And they're called critical thinking. There's critical thinking boxes, they're activity. Use those because those are helpful. Complete the labs. Kids hate to sit there and just listen. When they work with their hands, they learn and they absorb better. Have them assign them, what some of the other schools were saying is they assign reading material for the kids to take home for homework, and then come back tomorrow, let's talk about it. Rather than reading it to the kids in the classroom because they get bored. The next day is really more of a discussion. And then have them taking guided note-taking. We have a guided note-taking outline that's available. When you're there reading, have them get used to taking that guided note-taking because it kind of helps them to learn what they've taken. Be intentional. So here's the other thought. We talked about employability skills. In each of the hands-on activities, there are things that they can learn, soft skills that they're learning as they're doing activities. And did you hand this out? Mm-hmm. Each of you have this. These are all the activities, and it's a little small print, but it will be online available for you. The activities are on the left. The soft skills are all across the top. And so if you look across the first activity, it'll tell you exactly what are the soft skills that the students are learning and reinforced in that hands-on activity. So it's a great opportunity to say to kids, you know, what you just practiced is teamwork. You work together. Why did you practice teamwork? And talk a little bit about it. Kind of reinforcing what they've learned, and you can embed them right into the activities. In New Jersey, we had one teacher. The one class was a green energy academy. They were building solar panels for a greenhouse. These kids When I first got there in ninth grade, the kids all said to me, we're gonna be roofs installers, solar installers. When I got there by the time they graduated, they were all gonna go to college and become engineers or whatever they were gonna be. But in their freshman year, we went in June to talk to these kids. They were so articulate, and when we went in September, they were not. But by June, they spoke. We had the media there asking questions, and these kids came in suits and were able to communicate what they learned and what they did. And so we asked the teacher, what did you do? He says, every week they did a project, they had to write and they had to present. And they had to talk in front of the class. And then he built in efficiencies. When they were working, cutting a piece of wood, he'd say, why did you throw that piece out? Let's talk about it. You have to be efficient. So how can you have cut it differently so that you wouldn't throw that piece of wood out? He also wouldn't teach it. He'd say, build that. And they'd try to put it together and try to put it together, and they couldn't. And then they'd try this and they tried that, and they eventually figured it out, and that's how they learned. So, I mean, he had a very different way of teaching, and then he'd take math, and if there was math required in the class, he would make sure. And if they wrote, he would proofread their English. And it's like the kids would say, this is not a grammar class, why am I being more graded down on grammar? No, you have to learn grammar. So these are some things that unique things that I think other teachers have done that have worked, is incorporating it right into the class. Tell stories, go on field trips, get folks to come and talk to your classes. And I think, was it the fellow that came from AID? Get the right person, all right? Because if you don't, if you get somebody who they can't relate to, forget it. And the ideas for guest speakers are in these activity boxes in the material. It suggests maybe you can have a person come in at this point. And then the community of practice. If you get an email about joining the community of practice, try to be on those calls if you can, because it's a great way to network with other teachers that are doing it and learn from one another. And we really try to instill the sharing of best practices with each other. So let me go quickly. High School Energy Career Academy is on our curriculum site. This is our curriculum site. And we have all our EIF modules, but we have additional resources. But this is where the curriculum is, so if you wanted to go in here and just pull a lot of information here. We've talked about diverse, and I'm not gonna talk, these are the consortia, by the way. So you'll see that very few states don't have consortia. And we've talked about this. Qualify, back to that employability skills. Math skills is an issue, right? Passing the pre-employment test. Utilities require students pass the pre-employment test. Kids graduating out of college can't pass the pre-employment test because it's applied math, it's math at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they can't use a calculator. So it's the mental math, right? So what we've done, we've created a Get Into Energy Math and Test Prep independent study program. We also have a Get Into Energy Math curriculum that lasts for a week that anyone can just use any of the modules. And we also have applied math problems, so that if you wanted to incorporate some applied math problems in algebra or fractions or whatever it may be, it's broken up that way. It's hundreds and hundreds of math problems that you can use as a resource. But this would be great for students if they're struggling with a particular area of math, that they can go in and do independent study. Common employability skills, we work with the National Network of Business and Industry Associations, and they have a communication guide, they have a contextualized learning guide, they have an assessment. And what we've done is we've added additional pieces in here relevant to the industry. So on our website, we have all of this. Take it, use as much or as little as you want, but don't recreate the wheel. If you pull it, if there's stuff that interests you, activities that might interest you, use them. And here's our competency model that we've developed, and what we did is we looked at, here's Tiers 1, 2, and 3 are our foundational skills. Those are our workplace soft skills that we speak about. And these that are bordered in bold are the ones that are common across, that came across this common employability skills. So there's only a few that we have that are not listed across the various industries. Ethics, engineering, and then there's flexibility, reputation, ability to learn, and self-development. But the rest, the others are all there. And then EIF, which is some of what you teach, the energy industry fundamentals, covers all the way from some of the elements of 1 through 5. So then you get into the occupation specific. All right, so we have, how many of you have gone on the CEWD site? Okay, a lot of you have. So we have, this is on the side where you have to enter your password. There's an education section, educator section, just for educators. So I would encourage you to go in and take a look at that. This is what it looks like when you go on the member site, and you have this educator center section right here. You also have a section by demographics, so if you want to look at youth, or you want to look at programs for women, what can we do for women specifically? You can go here and do that, and look at this. And then you can do it by key job. What are the resources? So you can, a lot of the data, what we've done is kind of put it out there as a couple of different ways so you can find it easier. So I'd say go to this educator section and pull it. Here's a sample of the youth template that we have. We have an educator's communication kit. We have career pathway sheets. So Catherine showed before that map of the career pathway with the salaries all the way up. We have them for line worker, we have them for plant operator, technician, engineer. We have them. And we have them as a template for energy companies to take and create their own. But you as educators can use those career pathways as handouts to say you could start here, but look what you can do. And here's the education you need to get there. So great tools there. And we have employability skills workshops also that has a lot of those soft skills curriculum. We do newsletters. We got the Get Into Energy site. This is gonna be up on the site. These are all links. Just use them so you can find them. I just kind of put them here so that you can see. I've talked about most of these. The roadmap, the career roadmap, is here. So if you click on that, you'll be able to see all the roadmaps and be able to print them. We have Get Into Energy, Get Into STEM lesson plans available also, as well as contextual math problems, all here. All right. And then a community practice. And that was really quick. So anything that I've talked about that you might have questions on, or you want further information, please feel free to reach out to me. Rosa at CEWD.org, real easy to remember. Shoot me an email, and I'm more than glad to help you with anything. All right? All right.